Chris Avellone is a legendary figure in the games industry. He's actually written some of the best Western RPGs ever made. Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic 2, Divinity Original Sin 2, Pillars of Eternity and Fallout New Vegas, to name a few. All incredible games with fantastic writing and stories, and now that guy is working on Dying Light 2.
Dying Light 2 is the upcoming zombie survival sequel from Polish studio Techland. It's coming to PC, PS4 and Xbox One in 2019. Techland made a big point at this year's E3 of talking about the game's bold new steps into storytelling. It was one of the many games at this year's show promising you that your choices matter. The studio is taking a new approach to the story with a non-linear narrative. But what does that all mean and how will that work? Well, we approached Techland for more info, including specifically how that non-linear narrative bit would play out. And here's what they told us. Quote, internally we call the system Narrative Sandbox, simply because it gives you so much freedom. All your choices can take the narrative in completely different directions. For example, eliminate whole groups from the landscape of the city, and this means different outcomes for many stories, or even the main quest. Some of the choices will alter specific locations or whole regions of the city, meaning that depending on your choice, you'll get access to different quests, events, activities, and characters, and will be exposed to different threats and dangers, say new types of enemies.
Techland told us that changing the city introduces new actual gameplay elements like the healing fountains that was shown off at the E3 demo. And here's some more of what they said. Quote, you can even use your knowledge about the world, the factions, their weakness to transform the world as you want. Your choices shape the world around you, offering unique experience in terms of gameplay and narrative. So it all sounds very promising, with non-linear storytelling coming across as actual palpable changes to the world and the gameplay. Chris Avellone, the master RPG writer that we told you about in the intro, will be the one penning much of the story. His games are exactly the kind of thing you describe as non-linear as well, with dialogue choices and interactions with the world and environment playing a big part in why something like Knights of the Old Republic 2 or Fallout New Vegas is considered a classic. He spoke to VG247 recently about how he plans to try something new with Dying Light 2. Quote, I've done a lot of branching storylines, branching dialogues and a variety of reactive events and different endings in most of the titles I've worked on, so to be able to apply that to an open world space like Dying Light 2 is a fun challenge. The big one is learning that you shouldn't funnel the player, they're here to explore the space. Let them, don't shackle them. It can be a challenge to tell an open world story if you're not considering what the player brings to the equation and allowing them to assume an equal role in the events taking place, and even better, causing the events that lead to the story progression.
Techland told VG247 that the world itself is reactive and changes will go beyond just which option you choose in a dialogue tree. But the idea for the whole game sounds very ambitious, creating, quote, an open story that complements an open world game. And Chris Avellone will be the one helping Techland achieve a story that's full of morally grey areas without an obvious good or bad decision in sight. Quote, I'm addicted to challenging a lot of tropes and trying to flip them on their head and see what shakes out story-wise.
So Chris Avellone's got loads of pedigree, as we've covered some of the games, and that's just some of the games, he's made plenty more besides, and he does like a good RPG. He compared the development process to like writing a pen and paper RPG and being a kind of dungeon master type thing, and you're just telling the story, but you need a lot of flexibility because the player is an agent in the story. You can't just force them into a role, which is what a lot of games do. A lot of games like literally make you look at things and go, oh, look at that explosion over there, and so you're just kind of you get limited control and limited agency over what actually you can influence in the game. Whereas Dying Light is really, it sounds like trying to make a big stride towards telling an open-ended story, because a lot of open world games, yeah, we've had loads of open world games in the last few years, almost all of them have just got a main mission thread and side quests, and then you go through the main mission and you get a linear story, except it's just set in an open world. This sounds like it's trying to do something very different and make the open world gameplay actually affect where the story goes.
Yeah, and this is something that really appeals to me. Having choices matter. I mean, it's a bit of a meme around the office right now, but choices are really important to me. Like I played Detroit Become Human recently, and that was honestly one of my favourite gaming experiences this year. It really made a difference, feeling that I was having an impact on the game and how my characters were progressing through that. And this seems like the same kind of thing, but in a different same, whereas Detroit Become Human was a linear narrative. This is a non-linear narrative, and to hear something like that, co-written by lead writer or something, or the director of the writing, Chris Avellone, like that, there's such a huge name that he is. I'm really excited for what they can produce here, because I mean, open world games, as we know and think about them, as Mike said, it's just one main mission and a lot of busy work. Whereas this seems like, depending on your decisions, you know, it could lead to numerous replayability in a single player game like this, and you could have different experiences. Yeah. It all seems very exciting.
A lot of open world games pay lip service to the idea of, like, you know, it's a Resistance or something. Like, we just played Red Faction Guerrilla Remastered on stream on Twitch, and that was like, you know, it's quite an old game. It's dated a little bit in terms of how it actually plays and stuff, but even that had that open world concept of, like, you're a guerrilla fighter, and the more things you do in the side quests, in the open world stuff, destroying buildings, taking out infrastructure and stuff, and then that's all tied into the story. So games have tried to do it a little bit in the past. Like I said, it's kind of lip service at this point. They've not really, you know, explored it to the extent of changing the outcomes of stories and levels playing out differently, and levels not even being really levels. It's just a different area of the world, which is a different part of the story that needs to be told. I've got to say, you know, a zombie survival game at this point is probably one of the most least appealing genres to me personally, but this stuff sounds very interesting, and I want to see how it plays out. They've really got my attention with it, I've got to be honest. And the changes in gameplay is what is significant. They've made a point of saying it's not just dialogue choices, it's not just like saying something in a conversation, like in a Telltale game where they'll say, oh, you know, David is going to remember that. It's like, is he?
Is he really?
All right. But this is actual gameplay changes as well, which is huge.
Yeah, and they talked about it at E3, and there was an interview with Timon Smiktala, I think his name was, where he talked about how they've got a new engine, the C engine that they've produced now, and that they're using that to specifically create the game, because they specifically made this engine for this first-person parkour-based game. We're trying to work our way through the decisions involved with all these factions that you can ally yourself with or whatever, and then it's the night time where all the zombies come out and the gameplay kind of changes a lot. And it does sound like they're working on every aspect of the game, not just the story, not just the engine, not just like the parkour or whatever. They're beefing up the original game, which was, in my view, it was a very good game, the original
Dying Light. Popular.
Still popular to this day, yeah. But they're just like pushing every aspect of the game, and it is because of all the sounds that they're making from Techland. It is one of my most expected games for the next coming year, that's for sure.
So there's some positive noises about Dying Light 2. Let us know what you think about this. Are you looking forward to it? You're a little bit skeptical? Let us know what you think. Remember to like and subscribe if you happen to enjoy the video. There should be another one right there if you want to watch that, and a link to Patreon if you want to support the channel. Thanks for watching. See you next time.